I want to right every wrong.
Together as one, we can right every wrong.
I want to right every wrong.
Together as one,
We can right every wrong.
I want to right every wrong. And together as one, we all can right every wrong.
I want to right every wrong.
Together as one, we can right every wrong.
I want to right every wrong, and together as one, we can right every wrong.
I want to right every wrong.
And together as one, we can right every wrong.
I want to right every wrong. Together as one, we can right every wrong.
Hi, I'm Tavleen Mendirata and I'm a Rex Karamveer Global Fellow.
I'm Dr. Meetu Khurana and I'm a Rex Fellow.
Hi, I'm Deepika Narayan Bhardwaj. I'm a Rex Fellow.
My name is Ishita Katyal. I am a Rex Fellow.
So we come to the open mic sessions again now, and our next speaker is a young student, Sulavar Almeida, who is also my Chunu and my son.
Namaste, and I'm Sulavar, and I'm going to talk about something which every driver here does, talking on the phone while driving. So how many of you over here talking on the phone while driving?
Yes, slides, please.
So this is the incident which happened when a school bus driver was talking on the phone while driving. In July last year, beside the village of Medan district, 25 students aged between 3 and 15 were killed and some 20 injured when a school bus was smashed by a speeding train. One moment, they were a bunch of happy children going to school, and the next, they were screaming in horror as the Nanded passenger train slammed into their school bus at an unmanned railway crossing in Telangana. The dead included the school bus driver. The school authorities said that he was a new driver and was probably crossing the rail tracks for the first time. People blamed the bus driver, saying he ignored the stop sign at the signal and was speaking on his cell phone. He allegedly ignored the warnings of the students who cried out about the approaching train. The bus got dragged for 15 to 20 meters before the train braked. By then, it was reduced to a mangled heap with horrendous sights of weeping and bleeding children trapped inside. A mother who lost her child at the terrible tragedy said, "The bus left her house only 10 minutes earlier. It was the last goodbye by my child," she said in tears while recalling the lost heart of her son. 3 other families lost 2 of their children on the spot. A teacher who was present at the accident spot told media persons that it was a very sad sight. Textbooks, lunchboxes and water bottles were thrown all over, and some students sat helplessly inside the damaged bus crying in pain and shock. Reports say a father of 2 kids who died in the accident died of a heart attack hearing the news. Nearby villagers gathered at the accident site accused the Southern Railway of having left the railway crossing gate unfinished despite repeated reminders. It is a matter of national shame that well into the 21st century, Indians are still dying because of accidents at unmanned railway crossings. Accidents at these crossings are common, and in spite of several initiatives to place gates and have them manned, the pace of progress is agonizingly slow. Currently, railways have close to 31,000 level crossings, around 40% of which are unmanned. These 12,000 death traps account for 2/3 of all deaths in railway accidents. Though the Indian Railways pride in being the world's largest, ferrying 20 million in 11,000 odd trains every day, the safety record is wanting with accidents blamed on poor maintenance and human error. To avoid any further accidents, the railway need to take an immediate decision to eliminate these death traps across India. While the number of accidents continues, the Cashtag National Transporter is yet to pull its act together. Till such time, all these crossings are eliminated. The road users need to be more cautious and watchful while crossing. Mobile phones may have got instant communication within the reach of all, but also fast turning into a global killer. India needs stricter road safety laws, and there should be a zero tolerance policy towards drivers talking on the phone while driving. Thank you.
Thank you, Sulavar. Open the floor to questions. I tell you, this is a very big issue, and I promise you, as a consultant, when we do HR interventions, I insist with companies where I work that you should include it in your policy that no employee can use the mobile phone. And some organizations are taking it very seriously, and I'm very happy that Vodafone, which is a mobile company, takes this very seriously. In Vodafone, if you're caught speaking on the mobile phone, you get 1 warning. You may be whoever, you can be the CEO. There is no second warning. There is no second warning, you're fired. And the reason they take it so seriously is because speaking on the mobile phone while driving is not only a kind of a legal corruption, because if you get caught, you end up paying a bribe to the Havildar or the constable. But it's also the moral corruption of the worst kind, because you not only put your life in danger, you also put another person's life in danger, because you could knock out some pedestal and kill the person. Because human beings are not equipped to multitask. Multitasking is such a stupid concept, because human beings can't multitask. You can't drive and speak on the mobile phone. Because your mind wanders elsewhere. You're putting someone else's life in danger. Putting your life at risk is your choice, but putting someone else's life at risk is not a choice. So I'll open the floor for any questions that you may have. Yes, Akhil.
Yeah. All right.
So if you're drinking and driving, your reaction rate drops by 30%. If you're talking on a mobile phone, your reaction rate dropped by almost 26%. That means it's almost as bad as drinking and driving, for the same reason that Jerry said, that the thing is that your mind is distracted and you can't react quickly to what's happening. So even if you're using like a Bluetooth or things like that, it's as bad. So seriously, don't drink and drive and don't talk on the phone and drive. It's also bad.
In the PowerPoint presentation, you can see that it's a sudden crash, the bus got from the train.
Yeah, like it's become a habit because we started blaming government. Yes, unmanned crossings are there, but this was a human error because the driver was speaking on the mobile phone. You can see the pictures over there.
Children, it's a mother who lost both her children in the crash. And they were only children.
I will tell you a live example.
Yes, sir.
In the morning, there was traveling from a residence to the airport, Bangalore. At one stage, the driver of Fast Track, he lifted his phone. Then I asked him to side, stop it. I dropped him there. I took one more taxi and came. I did not pay the money also. There is a punishment for it. It's a live example.
Excellent.
15 minutes.
So you have to do some citizen policing now. Very nice. Excellent. I agree with you. That's the best way to do it. Yes.
Yeah, my special question to the speaker.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm a law teacher, and not to trivialize very important issue which you have just taken up, I would like to share with you what the kids of your age are doing. They are using all your gadgets while we are taking classes. You know, and as a law teacher, I can share with you that is such an important subject. Just like science, with science, you can have various methods, but for law, you have to be very serious. We have tried to put the little notices, we have tried to build up the attendances, we have tried to even detain the students, confiscate the phones, but we have failed. It's not a question of just smiling, college or university, it's like happening everywhere. Because they are adults and every time they have many excuses, that was such an urgency, that was such an important call, and they just keep on doing it. So can you suggest something? Well, the only thing I think they'll get stop it is when they pay the price. Like the driver over here pay the price for the job.
We're talking about drivers and gadgets and we personally taking care, but I just want to point out that we now have cabs where drivers have their gadgets in front of them. And we're talking about our personal safety, but we all are using these cabs where gadgets are running in front of them and they're checking whatever on those phones and directions and prices and everything. But we have come to a situation where we have cabs which are making huge business and they themselves are almost all the time.
Right. So there is a need for regulation over there also, I guess. So that I think is being done already because of the Uber cab and the issue in the. So there is going to be some policy on that. Thank you, yeah. So brilliant, excellent suggestion. Possibly I request you please give the certificate to Suragar. Thank you, Suragar. I shall call upon Mr. Charles, Dr. Charles Castro to please come up on stage.
Hello, good evening. I work on the mind. What we have here is ideas for action. I say the mind itself leads you to action if you operate it correctly. We have spoken a lot about rights, a lot about achieving things. And yet if you go across India, across anywhere, we are not achieving anything to the extent we want. Why? We have seen the problem with the mic test. If you work on the mic alone and not bother about the amplifier, would you be able to hear me? Think about it. And yet, most of us, most of the time, are doing exactly that. We have all heard about the mind. The conscious mind, unconscious mind. Unconscious mind is 90%, conscious mind is 10%. This is the 10% we are working on. All the time logic, all the time a bit of motivation, all the time everything except working on the amplifier, the unconscious mind. There are techniques to do this. And the ones who are experts on these techniques are the people mostly who are opposite us. The religious leaders who are on the fringe know how to do it. Get the people into alpha in God's name and preach. There are some good ones too. The same with the politicians. And the very same with our TV advertisements. They are well planned to bring all of us into alpha. I've used simple techniques where a boy in Ukraine, who was a college boy working for me for exhibition for $10, started a totally import business from West Bengal and became a great industrialist there. How? He came to my house in Germany, spent a few days only getting his mind full of unconscious mind image building. I had several examples, but I had to limit myself to 7 minutes. I have to be back because I go on and on. I had another boy at that time. He was earning 6,000 rupees a month in another place and using my computer shop or rented place to sleep. He was there with me for some time and same unconscious mind technique. Fellow social entrepreneurs, he started earning within 10 years somewhere around and above 5 lakh rupees a month. His mind was his power. You have to ask, how do we work on the amplifier? What's the technology? Simple. Stop logic, gives direct suggestions. Before that, bring them into the alpha mode, which is the learning mode, which is the mode between 7 and 13, which we don't have to learn that per second. But what you can know, you don't have to be a rishi. You don't have to be Vipassana. All you have to do is get into sleeping mode. In the first hour of sleeping, people are in alpha. Just speak to them at that time, suggest, and take change. I did that with one boy who was not doing his homework at all. His mother was complaining. It is 1 year now. He is doing the homework continuously. All that the mother did during that time was telling the daddy, see how good my son is. He is doing his homework regularly. Let's do this within the social arena we are working in. Thank you.
Now coming to alpha state of mind, how to be in alpha state of mind, not that how to get into that state.
Where sleeping is concerned, you have 1 full hour in alpha, the first hour, also the last hour before getting up. All you have to do, second person, is to repeat. I am making an excuse here, I am taking part of the 7 minutes over. Do the same with the mobile phone. Speaking to recording the mobile phone and let it play with you. You will be surprised at the changes that take place. Thank you again.
Mari Banu, please come up on stage and speak about your idea of action.
Hello everybody. I'm here to just put you through some of the experience I've been through as a fundraiser with Oxfam and prior to that, and my present portfolio as a director of Center for Social Initiative and Management. How many of you all have personally gone through this fundraising ordeal? Pleasant ones? Pleasant ones? Difficult ones? Yeah. So fundraising was a challenge in the beginning, where my first task was to sell tickets from a premier film show for a fundraiser for Oxfam's Kargil civilians and their families, the victims of the Kargil war. So it was not a it was not an easy task to fundraise, but in the process in time, say 2 years, 3 years, I wanted to do nothing but fundraise. So how did this get into? So people were getting bored listening to the same dialogue of asking for money, asking for a check or a DD or a cash for the same cause or a similar purpose. So we wanted something innovative to trigger people to think and contribute. So you all have newspapers getting into your homes every day. But did anyone think of collecting newspapers for a cause? I did this about 15 years ago, 15, 16 years ago. In Chennai, much more traditional than Delhi and Bombay, people are not wanting anyone to come into their homes, especially to collect newspapers. They usually have one of the people in the family to pack them and go and sell it in a vendor. So when I did this old newspaper campaign way back in '99, there was a huge response, especially amongst the colleges. The colleges took the initiative of saying, okay, I'll collect it for you and you can pick it up from our college campus. And you won't believe, the first month collection was not less than 1 ton of papers in one college. That was Loyola College in Chennai. And this was a big hit, and my director, who was based in Bangalore, said, how come we didn't think about this all this time? I said, it is very simple. Every time we collect papers, it's such a hassle for us to dispose it off. And we don't trust people to come into our homes to collect it. So when there's someone trustworthy and from a charity volunteering to come into your doorstep and collect the papers, it makes life easier. And people get it even more happier to donate with something which they can get rid of easily. So slowly, the old newspaper campaign picked up, and we then went to a Doctor Day campaign, where we say a doctor a day. 1 day in a month, all the consultation fees you raise in that 2 hour of consultation, you contribute for a charity. Not necessarily to the charity which I am coming from. Make it a habit of giving. So small initiatives like this trigger and our thought process, being creative and exploring opportunities, not all are of course positive, make us learn what is good, what is bad, and what is bad out of experience becomes a learning for another person. So I've documented all of my stories of fundraising in a book. Many of my stories are available online. I'll be happy to share with you more stories in the next 2-3 days when we meet during lunch. And I'll be happy to also assist NGOs who are looking for fundraising ideas for your organization. Thank you so much.
So, how much money did you earn in the collection of the newspapers?
Newspapers for the Kargil civilians, for the papers alone, average 12,000 a month we raise.
So, altogether, how much money did you earn?
The money directly will go for the relief program focused upon the Kargil civilians and their families. Everything was accounted. We gave a receipt to the Loyola College, and they knew that all these monies were well accounted for. So transparency and accountability was maintained even for the old newspaper campaign. We never said only cash donations would be accounted for. Even this was converted, monetized and accounted for.
How long was this newspaper collection?
This went on from '99 until I was there in 2005 with Oxfam India, and then later they took it over to Bangalore. They went to apartments and started raising more papers. So the campaign spread to Bangalore and even to other offices.
Move on with our next speaker. May I call Rakshit Tandon to please come up on stage and share his ideas for action.
I come from a very different league altogether. I've been doing this very passionately and actively, cyber hygiene and etiquette education all across the country. How to keep our children and youth safe from internet hazards and the dangers and lurking dangers on the internet. Starting in 2008, spoken to more than 12.5 lakh children in the country and more than 3,500 schools. Looking at the NCRB report, when we look at the NCRB report, we find that 70% of the people who are perpetrators to cybercrime in India are young generation. And if you look at the latest figures of NCRB, 3,301 people were arrested, out of which 1,635 were among the age group 18 to 30 and 65 were below 18 years. So there's the need of educating our young children about cyber law, how to be safe online, and I have been doing this. And when I go to these schools and I talk to children, the kind of problems they have, cyberbullying, cyber stalking, pornography, 11th standard student being caught by the police for posting some obscene post online on social media. And the major vulnerability I find is children who are very young, below 13. Like for example, Facebook, such a popular social media site, and it says that children above 13 should use it. But 78% of our children below 13 are having accounts on social media, and they become vulnerable. A 14-year-old girl committed suicide when she was into a relationship with a 22-year-old boyfriend, and that they made on Facebook. This happened in Bangalore. Another case happened in Mumbai, where a 14-year-old girl's personal sexting photographs were leaked online. Now, these are the kind of abuse I come across, and when I go to schools and I talk to children, out of 100, more than 30 children have complaints. I have an online platform where I've been addressing these issues. A lot of NGOs and organizations from the CSR have supported us. And another role of educating the law enforcement agencies, which I've been doing with the Government of India, BPRNE, I train the law enforcement officers how to address cybercrime issues, which is right now a weak point for our country. But if you look at the preparation of internet, 300 million people are using internet right now, and mobile, as earlier said, is one of the easiest medium right now. हमारे देश में 15 रुपए का सिम, 90 रुपए का रिचार्ज, पूरा महीना फ्री, और ऊपर से रात को बिल्कुल फ्री, तो वो हमारे जो बच्चे हैं वो रात को बहुत ज़्यादा एक्टिव हो जाते हैं. And that also creates where I got problems with children being abused online on WhatsApp or social media like that. So this is one cause which I've been doing, and I think Netticades, because more of the children are netizens, they're born and brought up in the internet world, they do everything online today, and as we're looking for a dream of a digital India, everything is online. So that's it. I just wanted to share this view of mine, and thank you so much for giving this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tandon. Brilliant work that you're doing in the space of cyber security. Any questions for Mr. Akshatandon?
You mentioned that you are working with Government of India for the cyber laws. Are you also speaking to them about any laws on TVs? Because even though you are stopping the internet use, but I think the TVs are also giving wrong kind of exposure to the students.
I agree
and
to
my
that.
kids sing Honey Sing songs, which is...
I'm not talking about any songs, but recently I saw an advertisement which was a very provocative advertisement for a young child to be seen, and that was some mobile company showing a sexting ad, sending her a boyfriend. So I've seen recently on the television there's a scroll where you can complain for this. But we're not stopping internet. What we're trying to prevent our young generation is from pornography, which is a big abuse right now. You must have heard recently in one of the NCR newspaper, a 4th grader was found watching porn on a tablet in an international school, on the school Wi-Fi, which the school says that we are a bagless school. We just run on tablets. So the pornography is a challenge. So yes, there is a reporting feature. People should come forward and report. Same happens on social media. There is a reporting feature which people don't utilize it. And they complain about the content. Who is creating that content? User is creating it. The perverted mind of the user is creating bad pages and porn sites. You block it, you report it. Companies like Google, they have zero tolerance for nudity and pornography. Facebook, they have zero tolerance. But then user has to come forward to that.
Are trying to help these young people against the crimes help. But like the example that you gave, the 14-year-old girl committed suicide because of the relationship. Is it not because of the exposure to the social media rather than the person or the person that she was with?
It is, yes, that's where we are trying to, the role we are playing is we are trying to educate them here with cyber hygiene and etiquettes, the do's and don'ts. They get flattered, they get famished into relationships. Why? Because in real life they're not living a relationship. They want to do it online. You look a selfie of a young girl on Facebook or WhatsApp, she gets a comment, you're looking hot and sexy. You know what is the reply of the girl? She likes it with 3 smileys and says thank you with a long thank you. In real life, if somebody gives you the same comment outside, you'll bang him with a sandal. Am I right or wrong? So there's a change of attitude. On Facebook you have 500 friends. And look at the names they have, these young children, Rocket, Rambo, Cool Boy, Sweet Girl. And in real life, how many friends? 5 or 10 friends. So that is where we try to create the bar.
So you came to a school 2 weeks ago.
Which school?
Shriram.
Yeah, I was there at the school, yeah.
So, and you don't know this case where there was a boy who got murdered after he talked to another person on Facebook?
Yeah. It was kidnapping and then murder. So having a wonderful profile on social media, sitting on his father's BMW, posting a post saying that I'm all alone, having a fun, Home Alone Part 2, and making a friend with an unknown person called Angel. This guy was called Adnan Patrawala, 16-year-old boy in Mumbai, who was kidnapped and murdered. So that was one of the kind of abuse. We call it cyber stalking. And that's why we sensitize children and educate them that don't meet anonymous friends. Don't show off yourself on that too without privacy. There are audience selectors when you use any social media. They ask you, you want to post this in public, you want to post this for your friend, or you want to post it anonymous. So this is where we sensitize. Yeah, this case was discussed.
Good evening.
Yes, sir.
What's your take on 66A?
Debatable.
Very ambiguous. It gives a lot of powers.
Yes, but then it has been corrected by the notification which says that without the interference of an Inspector General of Police, no arrest can be made on 66A. That has been made. We talk of defamation, we talk of abusive content. We are not violating Section 9 of Constitution, Article 9 of freedom of speech. We are talking of abusive content, which is a botheration right now on social media, that anybody goes and posts anything, they even defame or anti-religious post and all. So 66A, yes, it is right now in debate, and this one cap has been put, that is that any, without interference of a senior Inspector General officer, no inspector, as per the law, has the power to arrest anybody.
We now have Mr. Vijay Devuni. Vijay has been leading the Rice Bucket Challenge with his wife Manju Lata Garanti, and they have done a great job out of the mission of the Rice Bucket Challenge. I'm sure all of you have heard of the Rice Bucket Challenge. So Vijay is going to share his ideas for action, and then we shall break for tea.
Friends, after Rice Bucket Challenge, we became a little bit of celebrity status in Hyderabad, in our place. And we got invited to many places. One of it was Danossav, which is a joy of giving, where there were different modes of charity that were being discussed and being practiced. Okay, we further went, after that we went to a Seva Mela, wherein all the NGOs were assembled in a very big high-tech convention, which is the exhibition ground kind of a thing, where they have put up their stalls. And we got invited to all the local events that were happening. So one of the events was Danossav, where different methods of charity, like the ones where newspapers were being collected and sold for charity, and many different methods were discussed. And we eventually ended up to one place called Seva Mela, where all the NGOs put up a stall. There were about 150 odd NGOs that came up, and they put up their stalls, and the event was for 2 days. And they were all telling about what accomplishments or what charity work they do. Okay, after going to that and participating in Rice Bucket Challenge, I got a little doubt. Now, 2 days they are in the stall and they are discussing and doing everything. But what after 2 days? So let them be having some place where they reflect, and I started a Facebook page called 100 Charity Causes, wherein I started writing one by one what each of the charity causes, what they do, how we can participate and contribute to them. And frankly, it is not so easy to give. Frankly, I could only write about 82 of them, because I could not find 100 so far. So I wrote about all of them. Now what I am trying to do is I am trying to ask my friends to go to each of the charity cause, understand, read about it in the first place, and once you read about it, adopt one of them, not all of them, adopt one of them, talk to them. There are a lot of activities which you can do with the charity home. One of it would be hosting birthday parties or get-together parties kind of a thing, kitty parties at that place. So if you have a small child's birthday or something, you have a budget of 2,000, 3,000 or 5,000 rupees for them. Give it to the charity house and let them host the birthday party as they want. They can bring a cake and do whatever it takes, and they will do it. And each charity home has different accommodating capacity. Like if you have a convention hall of this size, you may accommodate about 500 people in this hall. Whereas a smaller room would accommodate only 10-20 people. So based on that, each charity home can accommodate, let us say, 10, 20, 50, 100 audiences. So I want somebody to reach out to them and find out how much they can accommodate and write about it. And then each of them needs some kind of a needs. Every month, some months they may need bed sheets, some other months they may need some ration or whatever it is required. Just put it up, we'll share it on the social media, and others could donate or contribute or do whatever it takes. So plans for action from my side, I want the 100 charity causes to be promoted and many more to be added. I don't mind writing more about it. It should not just stagnate at 100, it can go up to 999, even 1000 also. It's fine with me, I'm fine writing about all of them. All contact details will be shared about charity causes. All I want to do is more participation from everybody. Thank you, my friends.